Welcome back to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. My name is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital, the sports tech venture capital company. And on this show, I interview top sports entrepreneurs, athletes, and executives who are shaping and many times changing the overall sports business industry. You can subscribe to our show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course on our 76 Capital website. Today, my guest is Bill Pascrell III, who was recently named a special advisor to our 76 Capital portfolio company, IC360, the integrity, compliance, and education company for the gaming and sports industry. Bill Pascrell III, more commonly known as BP3, is a lobbyist for Princton Public Affairs Group. He is prominently known for his career in state, federal, and global affairs, where he is an expert in the gaming industry. You know, Bill always has a smile on his face. He's someone who you'll see all over the world, looking to support and help his clients and partners that he works with. He always has something smart to say, and quite frankly, it's always important, and you should listen to what he has to say. So I'm really excited to have him on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. So Bill, welcome to our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show.
Thank you, Wayne. It's good to be here. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. You definitely light up the room when you walk in. You lead some of the best, panel discussions and interviews that I've ever, been to across the industry. And I'm just awesome. I'm so excited to have you here. And you've had such a great career. And I want to talk about your work at what you do with your Princton Public Affairs Group, as well as your involvement at IC360. But before we get into that, I want to ask you what it was like to be one of the people who truly, over a 10-year period, worked to legalize sports betting across the whole United States. What was that like?
Wayne, again, thanks to you and 76 Capital, who I've known a long time and respect immensely. You don't need accolades. Everybody knows you. And I'm very appreciative to be here. My dad had a great line. He taught me many, many decades ago. He said, Bill, you and I aren't the brightest ships in the port, but luck is the residue of hard work. And, we know how to work hard. We're not 9-to-5 guys. So, my career was in government, counsel to a governor, Governor Florio, one of my mentors, chief of staff to a member of Congress, ran many campaigns, both at the federal, state, and local level. And I got a phone call. This is a great story you'll appreciate because of your dad and your background and your political experiences. I got a phone call from a guy, and I love to give tribute and credit where it's due. I deserve a little bit of credit, and I thank you for saying it. Joe Brennan, who is the head of IMEGA, the Interactive Media Entertainment Gaming Association, which is gobbledygook for him wanting to do three things. He calls me on October 9th of 2009. We're right in the middle of a gubernatorial election, which I was involved in. John Corzine, the incumbent governor, former Goldman Sachs exec, against Chris Christie, the former U.S. attorney. Chris Christie's always been a friend of mine, even though he's an R and I'm a D, right? So Joe calls me up. He says, Bill, and he called me on a hard line, not a mobile. He says, Bill, I'm Joe Brennan. He explains the whole thing. IMEGA was a conglomerate, Wayne, you know this, but many in the industry don't. It was made up of 37 offshore illegal books. And they were based all over, Europe and the Caribbean, Costa Rica, Isle of Man, blah, 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 Malta. He said, Bill, I don't need a sales pitch. I'm hiring you. A very good friend of mine who knows you, who's a First Amendment rights guy, which, is kind of a nice way of saying a pornography attorney. He said, this guy said, you need Bill Pascrell. I said, well, what's this all about? He says, well, I want to legalize sports betting in America. I go, it's already legal. What are you talking about? And this goes to show you what little I knew back then. This is October 9th, 2009, 4 weeks before the election. He says, I want to legalize sports betting. I want to do exchange wagering and horse racing. And I want to do iGaming in America. It's like, what the hell's iGaming? Right. So we go through the whole hoops and shoots. 20 minutes into the call, I said, look, I know you're going to think this is strange, but I think it'll end up helping our relationship. You'll know if I have nothing else, because I'm not the brightest ship in the port or the sharpest tool in the toolbox, but I do have integrity. There's nothing I can do for you in the next 4 weeks. We have a gubernatorial election. It's really heated. God only knows what the outcome will be. But call me the day after the election and we'll have a chat. He said, no. I need to hire you now. I said, look, send me a verbal dollar. He goes, because I'm worried about somebody else hiring you. And I said, I'll give you a commitment. I won't take any new clients in this space till I talk to you. Well, long story short, he left a little cranky. I didn't think I'd ever hear from him again. My candidate lost. Corzine lost to Christie. And Joe called me the next morning where, you have a hangover because of drinking your sorrows away. And he hired me that morning, the day after the election, 2009, November 2009. And we began the 10-year campaign to repeal PASPA, starting off with Senator Lesniak and Senate President Sweeney lodging a lawsuit, which I helped, and then getting the legislation in place and getting the ballot referendum done. And wouldn't you know, we got it on the ballot. And it was approved by an overwhelming majority. Now, here's the sad part. A lot of people take credit for the repeal of PASPA. I know who deserves the credit. I know who doesn't deserve the credit, but that's not what this is about. We were supposed to get a small cobble of resources to promote the ballot referendum. It passed in November 2011. And all the casinos in New Jersey were supposed to help put up a few shekels to create a fund that I could run the campaign. That never happened. First of all, they were a little bit averse to it. They thought it was a threat. And then they thought, well, it'll pass easily. And I told them, I said, no, there's a bunch of holy rollers out there and others that would oppose it. Joe Brennan ultimately ended up raising a few shekels. We were able to do a decent digital and boots on the ground campaign. And we got 67% of the vote. Compare that to what happened in California 2 years ago. Right. Not bad. And then right after the vote, Wayne, in November of 2011, we got immediately, like this, within 60 days by the end of the year, enabling legislation. And we're ready to launch in January 2012. And then the NFL came in and sued Dennis Drazen at Monmouth Park and Joe Brennan and shut us down. They got an injunctive relief. Now, long story short, Dennis Drazen ended up, and he's not allowed to say this, but I am, because he has a NDA. He got a few shekels years down the road when PASPA was repealed because he got a bond put up to protect him. Joe Brennan, unfortunately, didn't do that. Joe is a very big part of my life. He changed my life. I was a brick and mortar casino lawyer lobbyist, not in sports betting, not in iGaming, not in horse racing, not in lottery, not in esports, all of which I do now. But then we had this continuous battle over the next 8 years on federal lawsuits. The judge, who was appointed by Obama, who had the case out of the federal district court in Trenton, I went to school with. So
Amazing.
I'm with Ted Olson, right? And I was on the other side of the fence with Olson in Bush v. Gore. Ted Olson representing Bush with the hanging chads in Florida, and Robert Clement representing my candidate, Al Gore. But we were flipped, right? The NFL hired Robert Clement. and I got the industry and Governor Christie to hire Ted Olson. And Ted Olson's best line, and I hate to always go back to my dad, but he's my hero. God rest his soul. Ted Olson said to me, "Does your dad know you're in a case involving states' rights, the 10th Amendment? He'd kill you." so it just, and then I went to, after we lost twice in the federal district court, we lost twice in the Third Circuit. And then we finally got, because we kept tweaking the bill. We already had the ballot referendum done, because in New Jersey, in order to bring new gaming in, you have to have the voters decide, right? We went to the Supreme Court in December of 2017. Chris Christie was there. I was there with Ted Olson. Dennis Drazen was there. Lesniak was there. Sweeney was there. We're all there.
And of course, Dave Rebuck, who's also been on the show.
Exactly. And Dave Rebuck was the regulator, but Dave will always tell you, I don't make policy, I just implement it. And Dave is trying to scramble together thinking, hey, we may win this, we're going to have to launch it. So he and his team were traveling, doing meetings and calls to different sports books to learn about how to do this, because it's a new experience. Certainly, we left that Supreme Court hearing, I forget what day it was, in early December, right around this time, 8 years ago, and I felt really good about it. The colloquy was good, the debate was good. Ted Olson did a great job, and then 5 months later, in May 14th of 2018, we won. We won with a massive majority. I thought we'd get 5 votes. We got 7 votes with 2 dissenting votes. And then we launched 2 months later. And then, life just took on a new experience for me in working in all the 36 states that now have sports betting, either digitally, retail, or both.
Well, I'm so happy you shared that with everybody. I mean, this is, your involvement in all of this, knowing all the different players, is something that's incredible. It's really incredible. I mean, when you look at what's happened now, from May 14th of 2018 until now, as you said, it's live in 36. It's now legal in 39 plus DC, right? I mean, did you think it would go this fast?
I'll be candid with you. Before PASPA was repealed, Wayne, I told you I had 2 other projects with iMega. I got exchange wagering and horse racing done like that. We got it done in 2010. Unfortunately, it's like I get a lot when I'm on a golf course, I bump into different folks, either celebrities or athletes, and they're like, "Hey, Bill, I have to talk to you. I have this great vodka, or I have this great gin, or this great wine." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure it's wonderful, but if you don't have several $1 million to market it, it's not going anywhere. I don't care how good it is." Bacardi's the #1 rum, not because it's the best rum, but because they spend $100 million a year marketing globally, right? So I say that because exchange wagering was tough to get through, because not everybody's a horse race fan. Peer-to-peer betting, what exchange wagering is. But then Joe had me work, and he also got another, the largest client in terms of retention, my retainer, is Isai Scheinberg, who I just spoke to from PokerStars. Isai hired me in 2011, and I said to him, "Isai, you, Caesars, and a couple of others who I won't name are spending $40 million a year on lobbyists in Washington. I have a Washington firm. I could take your money too. It's not going anywhere. How do you know that, Bill?" I said, "You know why? The sponsor of the bill is Barney Frank, and the co-sponsor of the bill is William J. Pascrell Jr., congressman from New Jersey. He did it because Frank Catania, the former Dave Rebuck, right? He was Dave Rebuck's predecessor, got him to file it. My dad wouldn't know what iGaming was if it hit him over the head with a baseball bat. He had no idea. They couldn't get a committee hearing. It wasn't going anywhere. And by the way, the 2 sponsors are Democrats. I was just with Barney Frank, by the way. God bless him. First openly gay congressman. And he was convincing about, "God, man, your dad and I were watching you do what you did." I said to Isai Scheinberg, "You give me 10% of that, 2 years to do it, and I'll get iGaming done first in New Jersey, and we'll take it from there. And Eastside did it, took a chance with me. Now listen, I didn't make $4 million profit. I had to do a lot of work to get that done. We got iGaming done in Jersey, and then Delaware and Vegas, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island recently, West Virginia, Michigan. I thought that would have exploded quicker.
Yep.
I'm just being honest. Everybody tells you today, oh, Bill doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, I'm being honest. I thought iGaming would explode. Sports betting would be a little bit more challenging, and it was just the opposite. And there's a couple of reasons for that.
Well, it's pretty funny, when people sometimes, we hear whether it's a legislator or just somebody who's talking about their, people are like, well, we're not really for betting or that kind of stuff, but sports betting's fine. Like, we're not into gaming and slots and all that stuff, but sports betting, that's okay. That's okay. Right?
Yeah, it's okay. And I think
right. Well, it's pretty wild what has happened. And look, I mean, you're on the forefront from an iGaming perspective as to what could happen moving forward in the future. And there's some really, I think there's some interesting, some wins out there. We'll see what can happen over the next several years. But before we get to that, I really wanted to talk with you about, one of the things that you're now working on, which is something that we are certainly very interested in, is our company IC360, which is run by Eric Frank and Scott Sadin, and just we believe that such an important business across the gaming industry, because they're the integrity, the compliance, and the education company for the overall industry. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the business and what your role will be as a special advisor to the company.
Wayne, I'm very, very appreciative, and you were a big part of this, and so were your colleagues at 76 Capital. Would have never happened without you. I've known Eric Frank for a very long time, and his colleague, Eric Weiss, I've known for 15 years from formerly with the DGE. Let me say a few things. Eric Frank and I would meet 4 or 5 times a year at London Ice, at SBC, this one, that, and he would always say, Bill, we got to find a way to work together. And then, he would go his way, I would go my way, and we were all so busy. But thanks to you and a couple of your colleagues, it finally came to fruition. I am blessed and fortunate. And let me just say, before I get into my rant, okay, I started in my firm 30 years ago. I was 30 years old. I'd been counsel to a governor. I'd been chief of staff to a congressman, both very successful, but they lost their re-elections. I've had a blessed life, fortunately, to have a great dad, not because he was a congressman, but because he was a good regular guy. But, 30 years ago, when I started my practice, I had never generated one piece of business anywhere because I was in government. And then I got a phone call from a fireman in Paterson, New Jersey, who was the head of the Firefighters Union, the FMBA. It was my first client ever. He said, Bill, when you were in the governor's office and council, you were so good to us. You didn't give us everything we wanted, but you were honest. You were upfront. You were great. You always got back to us. We want to hire you. I said, hire me? What do you mean? I didn't even know how to say it, right? And then I got the PBA, the Policemen's Benevolent Association. And Wayne, then I got the funeral directors and the pediatricians. And I used to say, hey, I work from cradle to grave, pediatricians to the morticians, right? That was the line. Back then, I would scrape, pinch, do whatever I had to do to bring business in. I am blessed, not because I'm a wealthy man in terms of capital, but I'm doing okay. I can now choose who I want to work with. Back then, I'd have to work with guys who would treat me like garbage. Now I'm working with people like you who I like, genuinely like, right? And on top of it, IC360 is an incredible company for 3 reasons. First of all, not only are they well capitalized, their technology with their tool like Prohibit it is just unique. Nobody else has it. And I've always said to Eric and Scott, let's be careful. Make sure we have our IP lined up because people will steal this idea. You know, it's the whole idea of getting the data in on players to make sure they're not able to bet on platforms. It's a great tool. Operators love it. But, you know, before they got that tool, they were sort of like one of 4 or 5 companies that did compliance work. I know my son Billy at BetMakers, an Australian company, he's their US counsel, he loves Eric and Eric. He uses them for compliance, right? It helps make his job easier. It was the compliance piece, right? But what I love about Eric and Scott, particularly, is they have a vision that you can't just be on a treadmill, right? You have to always be innovative, new ideas, new tools. Second, and like I say this with all sincerity, and you know me, I don't just get up on a stage or do a podcast and kind of dial it in, right? I like to be passionate about what I'm doing, and I'm passionate when I believe in something. That's why I don't take on some work. If I don't believe in it, I'm not going to be good at it. 2, the human resources, which I think is very important. So many CEOs, which you and I bump into every day, are good numbers guys. They can read a spreadsheet, and that's okay. But human resources are very important, particularly in our industry. You know, personalization, localization, innovation. IC360 has fantastic folks, Ali, Dan Trillaro, and the rest of them. I don't want to leave anybody out.
Right.
But I've been impressed at the human resources. And thirdly, one of the most exciting things happened in May, thanks to you. I had dinner at his invitation with Eric Frank during SBC. SBC was in New Jersey. I went across the river to New York, and I live close to New York. And we had a nice dinner. And I don't want to give any secrets away, but he told me something that really got my juices going. He said, Billy, we're going to scale. We're bringing you on, okay? But we want you to ultimately create our government affairs team and reach. But I'm not just talking about America. You travel globally. You work with regulators across the globe. I want you to put it together. And I said, you know, Eric, I'm flattered, but I know I have to deliver. I said, this excites me because I've tried to convince clients to do this, and they ultimately, you know, they think GR is like, it's a waste of time. It doesn't produce anything. So then I didn't hear from Eric for a bit, and he called me July 3rd, which is my son's birthday, 2 months later, whatever it was, or a month and a half later. And he said, Billy, we got to pause. I'll explain why later, but this is going to happen. But let's just pause now. I'll come back to you in the fall. No problem at all. I get it. And sure enough, I saw you in Laguna Beach. I saw Scott. I saw Eric Weiss. Saw Van Egman, a bunch of others. And it came to fruition. I've been on board for a couple of weeks now. But the funniest thing in the world, and I'm so happy I'm allowed to tell this, I'm at G2E. Saw you there. Saw the rest of the team there. Eric Frank had to go home because there was the bad hurricane.
Right.
I had lunch with Dave Reebok. And we're just, just catching up. I see Dave all the time. And he says, Bill, how things going? I said, yeah. He came to my dad's wake, which was an honor, with Eric Weiss. And he said, Bill, business is going okay, but I'm not looking to kill it. I'm looking to cherry pick, right? He says, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I'll leave that up to him to share. And then he mentions, I'm being brought on board to be a senior advisor to IC360. And I go, what? He goes, yeah, I've been retained, and I'm going to be a senior advisor. I go, wow. I go, these guys are good because they've kept a good secret because I talk to them all the time. I wasn't on board yet. So I shared with Dave. I said, I'm probably not allowed to say this, but you're already on board. They're going to bring me on board. He goes, really? I said, they haven't told you that? So now we have these like weekly update calls. To be able to work with Dave on our side of the street is a blessing to me. And I feel privileged. I mean, you guys need and have Dave, and that's great. And I just feel blessed to be a part of it. But, you know, IC360 has a great team. But what's also great about it is they have so much experience and background, whether it's Dave on the regulatory boots on the ground side, or folks like me, or Eric Frank, who's a great entrepreneur, backed up by folks like you and Robin Shabra and the rest of the team. Like, I mean, I think it's going to be a trampoline into next year because the biggest, and I shared this with Eric and Scott, and they were great about it because I have a couple of clients who I've referred to IC360. The biggest complaint, and they're working on it, was not the technology, not the customer service, not the data, not the integrity, none of that. It was, they're a little expensive. I said, well, I'll be honest with you. I don't think they're charging the right fees. I think they're too cheap. So that was a good convince.
Well, Bill, I really, of course, really like to hear that. But we do believe we're really off, giving at IC360 a lot of value, and everything you just said is something that I know that Laura Lynn Sandoval is going to be smiling when she watches the show because, as a fellow board member with me, along with Robin, we have been talking about this. And we're so excited to have Dave and you on board as special advisors to the business, and just can't wait to spend more time together as a group so that we can really look at and how can we make, and one of the things that I talk about, you've heard me say this many times, how can we make the gaming industry safe and fun? And that's what it's all about, right? It's all about making sure that your people are doing the right thing. Your people can have a good time. They have the right. They're educated about this. There's so many pieces to this, but to do this through the use of technology is in enabling people to just have a great experience is what this company at the core is all about.
That's Wayne. That's exactly right. And the other important piece is like I've said, and I don't want to be too kind of in people's faces, but the technology is second to none, okay? But what's even more important is the lived experience. And Eric Frank and Eric Weiss all saw the need for that. They brought on some really special people who I've known for a long time through my involvement for the last 6 years on the Entain Foundation for Responsible Gaming, right? That allows me to travel the globe and talk about RG, which I think is very important to create a more sustainable industry. But that lived experience, like teaching people, whether it's the military or whether it's folks that are more challenged and more leaning towards addictive behavior, or athletes. The worst thing an athlete can do is to play around with gambling. It should be prohibited, and we need to help them understand how to do that. But then there's also the defensive mechanism to block them so that they don't make that mistake.
Right. Well, one of the things I think on that point, I mean, and this has been fascinating, having you on the show. Again, thank you so much for joining us on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show, Bill. I mean, like, I think the first part of this show has just been so interesting. We're going to have to do this again, and we'll definitely bring you and Dave on together to talk about what you're doing. That'll be a lot of fun. But when you just one of the things I wanted to just touch on, and maybe from your experience, I think could be interesting. I mean, a lot of times, because we talk about pro bet, which does block, right, people from being able to get on and bet if they shouldn't be, if they're an interested party somehow involved in the game. But one of the things that I think that from a from a legislative perspective or a regulatory perspective, sometimes I'll hear from, not only sometimes, I hear a lot from, whether it's large governing bodies, conference, college conferences, professional sports teams, legislators themselves will want to prohibit the opportunity to be able to bet on certain parts of games or prop bets or things like that. And I think they're well-meaning, but at the same time, explain what I'm talking about here. Maybe share a little bit about this.
You're so spot on. Let me just tee it up this way. I'll try to be brief. I'm sorry. I like to talk. I could talk chrome off a trailer hitch. So my frustration these days is not that bad, but it's that this is a young person's industry. Okay. I mean, when I got into the industry, I was like in my mid 40s. I'm talking about the online, mobile,
right,
digital industry, sports betting, iGaming, lottery, horse racing. Most young people don't have an appreciation for history. History is important, right? They don't know how PASPA was repealed. They don't know how iGaming first got done in America. And we're really talking right now about the American model, right? They don't know any of that. Some do, but most don't. I believe a couple of things are axiomatic. And I'll shout this like I do every day. It's in my bone marrow. I'll shout it from the mountaintops. Banning something makes it more intriguing and interesting and drives people to do it. Banning something solves nothing. All you do is drive people to the black market. But let me do this because this is the way I was taught, not like in a tough way. My dad did it by example. He was very didactic. When I was a young lad, say 12, 13, we know the drinking age is 21. We had Sunday dinner, pasta and gravy, right? My mom was Italian, my dad was Italian. Every Sunday, and I have two younger twin brothers who are a few years younger than me. Twin brothers. We'd sit down, not when we were like single digits, but 12, 13, 14. My dad would pour every Sunday a little glass of homemade wine for each of us. We hated it. Right? We freaking hated it. But I didn't know what he was doing. And I've said this, and I've had so many people from various aspects of life come back to me. Some people get offended by it, right? Oh my God, what was your father doing? But my dad was teaching us, okay, that someday you're going to be able to do this, right? And let me take the stigma away. Now, let me tell you, Wayne, when I went to college, and I was still under 21, I went to Rutgers undergrad, then I went to the Kennedy School at Harvard, then I went to Seton Hall Law. I remember the experiences I had watching folks in fraternities and others just getting wiped out, getting hurt, and some of them getting kicked out of school because it was taboo, it was forbidden, so they wanted to explore it. I had no idea till later in life as I reflected what my dad did for me. I am working now. I want to get back to the point, but hopefully people remember that instead of me, being didactic. Banning prop bets, which is only 1 or 2% of the industry, is only going to drive it. It hurts the legal licensed operators because they have less revenue, and it drives people to the black market. If I want to do a prop bet and I can't do it through the licensed operators, I'll just go to the local bookie, or I'll do it on Bovado or Bulldog. Banning advertising is the dumbest idea in the world. So, I've been working with the Intain Foundation to meet with Senator Blumenthal and Congressman Tonko. The rest of the industry wouldn't meet with them to explain to them this is a mistake, the safer gambling bill that they introduced. But, what the industry doesn't do well, and I guess I've been trying in my own way to ankle bite and convince the industry. I spend more time lobbying the industry than I do lobbying government officials. We have a great story to tell. The industry has been tremendously successful. The industry cares about consumer protection, cares about problem gambling, is doing what they can to self-regulate, but we have to get that story out there. And let me just wrap with this, because I'm very proud of this. And, you know, it wasn't promoted properly, but I got a call from a guy that's the president of Faulkner University in May, okay, right after SBC. I think I was in Phoenix for meetings. And he said, Bill, you know, I know you're a Democrat. I'm the president of Faulkner University. It's based in Montgomery, Alabama. And I've only been to Alabama for Roll Tide Roll games. I've never been there for business, really. And he said, Governor Kay Ivey told us we should call you. I said, really? She goes, yeah, she used to be a Democrat. She's a Republican, a very conservative state, older woman. She says she's good friends with you. I said, okay, I didn't think we were really good friends, but I'll take it. He said, would you consider coming to Faulkner and doing a debate on the morality of gambling? I said, sure, I'd be happy to do it. He said, we'll pay for your air, we'll pay for your hotel, we'll feed you, and we'll give you a stipend. I said, okay. He says, you're not going to ask me what the stipend is? I said, nah, like, what's it, a few shekels, whatever. He goes, no, we're going to give you a $50,000 stipend. I said, okay. I said, I'll tell you what, pay for my air, pay for my hotel, feed me, you know, burp me and all that. Take the 50,000 and donate back to the school. He goes, you're kidding me. I go, no, I'm not going to get paid to come speak about the morality of gambling. Okay. Cover my expenses. My partners will be fine, so we don't have to go out of pocket. I did it in October. There's 1,700 people in the gymnasium, another 7,000 on YouTube throughout Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia. It was a great experience, 2 hours. But what I liked about it is it gave me the chance. Nobody else in the industry steps up to do this. And people were telling me, you're getting set up. This is a stupid idea. No, because I had people come up to me. It was a 1 hour exchange, 5-minute, 10-minute break, and then another hour. It was a pretty intense debate. And I debated the dean of the Bible school, right? And I'm Catholic, right? So I know a little bit about the Bible. I'm not a holy roller. I go to church when I can. Definitely on Christmas Eve and Easter Sunday. So they liked my candor, and I was able to explain to them some things they didn't understand. That what we need to get out there that isn't out there is this simple fact. Licensed operators spend massive amounts of money through companies like yours that invest in them to get a license, to do compliance, to protect their consumers. The black market has none of that. They don't pay taxes. All their jobs are offshore. They're not really contributing to the economy. They'll take a addicted gambler and just give them more free bets to keep them going. They could care less. So, like, by banning something, you're hurting the license operators, you're hurting the jurisdiction, and you're not really solving any problems.
Well, you are right on as usual, and it's been awesome having you on the show. Bill, thanks so much for your time. We've got to, as I said, I got to have you back. And on behalf of our whole 76 Capital team, you know, thanks for coming on. Thanks to all of you out there for tuning in to this edition of our Sports Leadership Show. Please remember to subscribe to our show on all your favorite podcasts, platforms that you use. And you can also just go to our 76 Capital website to hear this edition and all the other great shows that we've done over the last several years. And of course, always remember to get out there and go make it happen. Thanks a lot, Bill.
Thanks, Wayne, very much.